Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today, I'm going to be showing you guys my final official 2024 presidential election prediction between the Vice President Kamala Harris, who will be facing off against the former President Donald Trump. But before we get started with my final prediction map, make sure you guys are subscribed, click the bell so you don't miss on my content, press the like button, share this video if you are interested. Don't forget we do have memberships. You can find links to that in the description section. So let's begin with my official electoral map prediction. So in the 2020 presidential election, in the last election, I predicted Joe Biden would get roughly 279 electoral votes, and I obviously incorrectly predicted two states. Arizona and Georgia were my errors in which I had Trump winning it, but those were the two states that I did miss. So now in this election, we'll see how many states I get correctly. In 2020, I only missed two, and those were the Sunbelt states. So I think there are 93 truly swing and toss-up races, and those states are highlighted in yellow as you can see on the screen. Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, the three most important Rust Belt states that can ultimately decide the outcome of the selection, especially Pennsylvania, as we all know, is the tipping point state. Those 7 swing states are the true toss-up ones, with its 93 total electoral votes when you sum up all the battleground states. Now, the states that are highlighted in gray, like Minnesota or Texas, as an example, are considered battleground states. You can call them swing states, but in my opinion, those aren't really the toss-up ones. Those typically swing either way to the right, and they lean either way, or to the left, for example. But I think that yellow states are really what's going to decide this election. So enough talking, let's begin with the typical likely states, and now moving into the solid red column for Donald Trump. I think Iowa is now safe for the former president. I expect him to surpass double digits, over 10 points. In this state, it's really shifting towards the right. It's basically a very red state at this point in time. It's a lost cause for any Democrat, no matter who is at the top of the ticket, whether it's Harris or Biden. It does not really matter. Iowa will not be close at all in this election. And as for Ohio, I think this state will remain likely for Donald Trump. Obviously, you have J.D. Vance, who is Trump's VP. He's on the same ticket. He is the senator in this state. You have that home state advantage electorally for the VP. That's really beneficial to Donald Trump. Not saying that, J.D. Vance is any popular than Donald Trump is, but I'm still saying that Ohio will go to Donald Trump by close to 10 points, in my opinion. That's my margin guess. And then I also have Florida and Texas likely for the former president. Let's start off with Florida. I think because of the Cuban shift, Hispanics specifically are really shifting towards the right. You take a look at the 2022 midterms. Ron DeSantis won by nearly 20 points. Marco Rubio even managed to get 13% of the vote. And even Miami-Dade County, Democrats rely on that blue county, flipped from blue to red in the midterms. And right now, in terms of the early vote that we're getting, Donald Trump is leading in Miami-Dade County, which is literally a blue county, which is not good whatsoever for Kamala Harris. So if I had to make a guess, I would say Trump wins Florida on Election Day by around 8 to 9 percentage points. And I won't even be shocked if he does manage to get double digits. It's basically a lost cause for any Democrat at this point, no matter who's at the top of the ticket. Even if it wasn't Kamala Harris, Florida is still likely Republican for Donald Trump. Basically, the entirety of the state has abandoned the Democratic Party. And as for Texas, because this is a border state, that is a losing issue for Kamala Harris automatically. She can't address the issue of the border at all whatsoever. Therefore, Trump's going to win Texas, in my opinion, by close to 9 percentage points, similar to Florida. I think this still is a very red state, and Democrats time and time again keep hoping that they can possibly flip this state, or at least make it somewhat competitive. Even though it's been somewhat competitive, they still failed to flip it in 2018 on the Senate. Beto O'Rourke fell short to Ted Cruz. In the 2020 election, Democrats hope they can make it close on the presidential. It was not. Donald Trump won it by a likely margin of over 5.5 percentage points. Even in the 2022 midterms, Democrats hoped they can make it close on the governorship. Greg Abbott absolutely destroyed Beto O'Rourke, won by double digits in this state. Therefore, I don't think Texans are going to mess around with the border crisis at all, and I don't see how Kamala can possibly do good in this state. And then as for the likely states for Kamala Harris, by the way, I do think New York is now shifting down, narrowing up to the likely column for Kamala Harris. I think by the time we get to the election, she'd probably still win this state, but by a likely margin instead of a solid blue one that we're used to seeing, but probably around 10 to maybe 11 percentage points. Now, Lee Zeldin managed to have it within 6 in the 2022 midterms on the governorship as a Republican in a heavily blue state. In 2020, Biden won by 23 points, but the polls severely underestimated. Keep in mind, New York had literally the worst polling year out of any other state. They had Biden up by 29 right before the election. He only won it by 23. So that's a polling year of roughly almost 9 points. If that were to happen again, right now on average, Kamala's up by like 14 points. Then it would be decided within single digits. But obviously, not enough for Trump to overcome the votes in there. And he had a few rallies, I believe like 2 or 3 in Madison Square Garden, the Bronx as well, just, recently. And I think he wants to make it in play. It might get close, but still, obviously, Kamala will comfortably win this state. And then I do think that Colorado will remain likely for Kamala Harris. Same thing goes for New Mexico. Colorado is actually shifting bluer, and the only reason why I can see this possibly getting closer is because of what happened to Aurora with, what happened with the, invasion literally of an apartment complex. I think maybe that can piss off a lot of voters. And also what was going on with the Republican primaries, they try to keep the Supreme Court in the state literally tried to keep Trump off the ballot. And the, U.S. Supreme Court had to intervene and keep Trump on the ballot. So I think that could also piss off a lot of voters. But still, this is a very blue state. Colorado is shifting towards the left, and I don't think it's going to be close at all. I do expect Kamala to win this state by around 9 percentage points. And then you have New Mexico. I think it's going to be likely for Harris, probably by around 7 percentage points. This is a border state, so it can increase or boost Donald Trump's chances. But Albuquerque is a Democratic stronghold county. It has a lot of white liberals, so it's hard for Trump to overcome the votes in there. But I do think he will improve somewhat with Hispanics, but still not enough to win this state. And then you have Minnesota and New Hampshire. I think both of those are likely for Kamala Harris. The main reason why Minnesota likely is because obviously you have that Tim Walz effect, the impact on the VP. He's literally the governor in the state and on the same ticket. I do think he can sway the vote in favor of the vice president. Now, what I will say is you don't have the George Floyd effect, and you don't have BLM, which is what really pushed the suburbs here and Minneapolis to the left in the 2020 election. But I do think that Kamala Harris could perform better with the women vote than someone like Joe Biden, which would keep the state very blue. But as of right now, I have Kamala Harris winning it by an exact margin of 5 percentage points, which is a little bit more than most of the polling, because if you take a look at RCP, she's up by 4.7 in this state. So I actually think the polls are slightly underestimating her in Minnesota, but that's just my opinion. And then you have the state of New Hampshire. This state has a lot of college-educated voters, which that group specifically really pans out well for Democrats. And, Tim Walz really focused on education heavily as his time as governor. So I think he can correlate to a lot of New Hampshire voters, especially, college-educated ones. And New Hampshire's just shifting towards the left. Majority of polls actually has Kamala Harris doing better in New Hampshire than she is in Virginia. That goes to show you the shifts in the trends favor the Democrats in the state on the presidential election or, general election level. And then you have the lean states for both of these candidates. Let's begin with Donald Trump. I think Arizona is going to go to him by a lean margin of around 3 percentage points. You have Georgia, also the same thing in there. I have Trump winning it by close to 2 or maybe 3 percentage points. And North Carolina as well. Let's begin with Arizona. This is a border state. Yet again, just same thing for Texas. That's a losing issue for Kamala Harris. She can't address that whatsoever. Now, the main reason why Biden flipped Arizona for the first time for any Democrat since a long time in the 2020 election was because you had a lot of McCain-style voters. People on the right call them neocons. A lot of them voted for Bush, Mitt Romney, McCain, and some partially voted for Trump in 2016, but broke to Biden in 2020 because Trump was seen as more of an extremist, and Biden, even though he was a Democrat, he's still seen more as a moderate candidate. I don't see Kamala Harris being as moderate as Biden seemed to be in the 2020 election, or, as he was portrayed as. But, therefore, Kamala Harris is not moderate whatsoever. So I can see the McCain-style voters who voted for Biden in 2020 go back to Donald Trump, which would make this state redder. and you take a look at majority of the polls, even the most left-leaning pollsters, CBS, which is not friendly to Trump at all, has Trump up by 3 percentage points in the state of Arizona. And you may say that there are right-leaning pollsters skewing the average, even though that may be somewhat correct. You also have left-leaning ones suggesting the same thing. And by the way, I've seen some left-leaning polls actually show better numbers for Donald Trump than the right-leaning ones. For example, CBS has Trump winning Arizona more than Trafalgar, guys. Trafalgar is a right-leaning pollster. CBS is a left-leaning one. And that's really interesting that left-leaning pollsters are showing better signs, better numbers for Trump than even the most right-leaning pollsters, which is pretty interesting. So I think if Trump does win the independent vote among independents or undecideds on Election Day, he's very favored in the state of Arizona, and his odds on Polymarket are extremely high as of right now. And then you have Georgia. So also the main reason why Biden won it for the first time since Bill Clinton for any Democrat was because he got high turnout in Atlanta, the metropolitan area, the suburbs, especially among African American voters. He had a lot of enthusiasm, obviously. He had BLM on the side. He has COVID on his side. You have the major celebrity endorsements go in favor of Joe Biden. All those three factors I just mentioned are not here to save Kamala Harris this time around. So Georgia's going to be red this time. And even in 2016, Trump managed to get past 5 points in this state. So what makes you think he's not going to win? Also was the closest battleground state of all of them in 2020. It was decided by the narrowest margin of just 0.3%, 10,000 votes. So Trump is most likely going to flip this state. Kamala Harris does not have the same enthusiasm as Biden did going, into the 2020 election. Now we're heading into 2024 election. And also, Brian Kemp, the governor here, has passed election day laws in which regarding absentee ballots have to be submitted by 8 p.m. and won't be accepted any later. That means the state would be called faster, and that's really beneficial to the former president. And North Carolina as well, this state, just like Florida, actually had a hurricane, so maybe that can impact the vote. Maybe, it hurt rural areas like red counties were, worse than, I would say, urban areas or blue counties, which could help Kamala Harris, but I don't think that's going to happen. So therefore, North Carolina is still a red state. Now, what's going on with the governorship regards to Mark Robinson, I do think Josh Stein as of right now wins by like 8 points. So maybe Mark Robinson does slightly hurt Trump, but that's still not enough to have Kamala winning. Therefore, as of right now, I have Trump winning North Carolina by about 2.5 percentage points. That's the margin. And I also do have Wisconsin, the Rust Belt state, going to Donald Trump by a lean margin. I think the polls are going to be wrong because majority of pollsters on 538 and RCP as well are suggesting Wisconsin is going to vote to the right. Wisconsin is going to vote to the left of both Michigan and Pennsylvania, which I just cannot see whatsoever. Keep in mind, Wisconsin had the second worst polling year out of any other state with the exception of New York in the last election. They predicted Biden would win by 6 points. He did not get anywhere near there. He only won by 0.6, just 20,000 votes. I think the polls are going to be wrong. I have Wisconsin voting to the right of both Michigan and Pennsylvania, as it literally usually always does. I don't trust the polls. I don't see how Michigan votes to the right of Wisconsin. I think that's absolutely absurd. Michigan was the bluest Rust Belt state of the three in 2020. It voted to the left of both Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Biden nearly won it by almost 3 points. And I think the only reason why Biden won Wisconsin was because of Milwaukee County. If Kamala does not get a high enough turnout or in par in terms of performance in Milwaukee County, she's not going to win this state because she literally relies on that one county. And also, I expect Trump to flip Door County. And by the way, wherever Door County goes, basically, Door County correctly predicts the winner of the election in the last 5 elections. So wherever Door County sways, the entire state of Wisconsin will sway in that direction as well. If Trump flips Door County, he's going to win the state. Same thing goes for Kamala Harris. And I think Wisconsin is actually the widest Rust Belt state, and that's not going to be good for Kamala Harris. And then you have Michigan, which we just talked about. Roughly 100,000 voters voted uncommitted in the Democratic primaries. That's a large uncommitted vote, and that's going to hurt Kamala in some of these stronghold Democratic counties as well, which could significantly decrease turnout in Dearborn, Michigan, as well. And Trump has got endorsed by literally the Arab mayor in this state of Dearborn, Michigan, and I think that's severely going to hurt Kamala Harris. And I would actually originally have Kamala winning the state of Michigan by a tilt margin of under percentage point, but because Wisconsin is going to Donald Trump, and I have Pennsylvania also going to Donald Trump, which we would get to later. I do think that these Rust Belt states, obviously, this is a fact. They never break apart. They never split apart from each other. If one Rust Belt state goes in one direction, the rest will follow. And because I have Wisconsin and Pennsylvania going to Donald Trump, I don't expect Michigan to break apart. Now, I do think that Michigan would be the closest Rust Belt state, in favor of Kamala Harris. But still, she's not going to win it. So, therefore, I have Donald Trump winning it by a tilt margin. And then you have the state of Pennsylvania. I do think Trump's going to win it by about 1 percentage point. That's considered a tilt margin in my opinion. I expect him to flip Erie County. Central County is going to be close, but still, I don't think Trump's going to flip that state. Biden won it by like 4.5. Flip that county. Biden won it by 4.5. I do think Trump's going to flip Northampton and only went to Biden by 0.7. And Butler County is where Donald Trump got shot at. I do think that can boost turnout and skyrocket and drive people to the polls. In some of these stronghold Democratic counties like Pittsburgh, and including the suburbs as well, which in my opinion, the entirety of this election comes down to the suburbs, not the rural areas, not the urban areas, including Philadelphia as well. And Kamala has no enthusiasm in the Rust Belt whatsoever. She was literally the Attorney General of California. That has nothing to do with these Rust Belt voters. I don't think she can, have any type of, name recognition at all in the Rust Belt. And Biden had all the name recognition in Pennsylvania, and he still only won that state by just, 1%, 80,000 votes. So imagine Kamala, she would do just much, much worse, in my opinion. So we have 2 more states before we end off this video, Virginia and Nevada. As of right now, I have Kamala Harris winning the state of Virginia by a lead margin of 4 percentage points, if I had to make a guess with the margin. And just like from Georgia, you have the governor here, Glenn Youngkin, who has been trying very hard to try to make the state, very competitive for Donald Trump. And he even got blocked by, I believe, the state's Supreme Court in trying to remove non-citizens from the voter rolls. And also, he's trying to mandate paper ballot voting only on Election Day. So all these things that he's trying to do is going to help Donald Trump. But still, it's not enough for him to overcome the vote. Therefore, Kamala's going to win the state. But when Biden was still in the race, keep in mind, for those who say it's impossible for Trump to flip the state, it's not, because he literally was winning it on the RCP average, like the week prior to Biden dropping out, by 0.4%. Like, Trump literally had the lead in Virginia, so it's not impossible. And then you have the state of Nevada for the last state. I have Trump nearly winning it by under percentage point at tilt margin. I think it's going to be extremely close. I expect him to flip Washoe County and have skyrocket turnout in the Vegas area of Clark County, which is a Democratic stronghold county. Democrats really rely on that one specific county to win this state, and that's the only reason why they have been winning this state in the past is because of Clark County. And if Trump performs significantly better among Hispanic voters, which he is according to most polls, actually a lot of polls actually have him up among Hispanic voters, which is disastrous for Kamala Harris, I think he's going to win this state. And according to the early vote, Republicans are doing tremendously better compared to 2020 in the early vote in the state of Nevada. So I think he's going to win the state's 6 electoral votes, getting 312 electoral votes, greater than his 2016 margin, 226 electoral votes. So that's pretty much it. This is my final official prediction. Keep in mind, in 2020, I had Biden at 279 electoral votes. Now I have Trump at 312. So let me know what you think on the map. Do you agree with my final prediction? Why or why not? And one last final reminder is to subscribe. Click the bell so you don't miss on my content. Press the like button. Share this video. Don't forget, if you're interested, we have memberships. You can find a link to that in the description section. Thank you, everyone, for watching.